Okay, welcome everyone to my Turf University College. Sorry, I didn't update the speech. Oh dear. Honestly, as Dean was saying, it's one of the most ironic cancellations ever. I think it could only be topped by one of the speakers getting mugged on the way here. But look, we're not at UCD, but we are together. We're not at UCD, but we can respect the main value of UCD, and that is inclusion. And I think in the spirit of inclusion, we should begin with a land acknowledgement. I actually asked Brock to provide me with one for Dublin. So here it is, I haven't seen it yet. We acknowledge the indigenous Gaelic Irish, particularly the local clans such as the Idunlanga, as the traditional stewards of this land whose presence predates the Viking founding of Dublin in the 9th century. This is not, hang on, I don't like where this is going. This is indigenous Irish. It's kind of far right. None of that backward-looking sovereignty, please. Let's try something else inclusive. I think it's time we shared our pronouns. Everyone picked up their pronoun badge on the way in? No?
Coffee.
I don't see any pronouns. Shit, it's not going to be any good for single people trying to pick someone up tonight. It's going to be like a lucky dip. This is exactly where you go if you're trying to hook up to a panel discussion on is Ireland safe. So that's not good. But pronouns actually, they do go out with our topic of crime. We're talking about crime. And the biggest scourge of crime is, of course, misgendering. At least our universities tell us it's illegal, it's a crime. It's written in their gender identity policies, and the award-winning gender identity policies, so they're full of experts, so they must know the law. Okay, that's enough of the inclusive welcome. Now, let's say something about my role here. I am a UC academic, specializing in ancient philosophy, and I booked the Village Auditorium at Belfield for tonight's event. I'm sorry I made that sound like an introductory speech at an AA meeting. Actually, if anyone's seen Kathleen Stock, how she describes herself, she describes herself as a recovering academic, and let's see what she means. Now, I did say to the lads, I said to Dean that I don't want to be part of the panel itself. I don't know enough about crime in Ireland to talk about it. As Douglas Murray might put it, I'm not an expert on crime. I haven't been a victim of crime. How do you talk about crime if you've never been to a crime scene? Now, I love Douglas Murray. I have a big man crush on Douglas Murray. But anyway, I was asked instead to give this short introductory speech at the start of the event. And I was asked to talk about, and you're going to love this considering what happened next, the importance of hard conversations. And what better place to have a hard conversation than a university campus? Well, events have rather overtaken things, of course. I think what happened next is, alongside Mary Kenny's disinvitation to the University of Limerick 2 years ago, it's perhaps the biggest campus cancellation of recent times in Ireland. I think we should call ourselves the Belfield Four. We are the band. So perhaps we should get together with Mary and go on a tour around the country. Tonight, Mary Kenny and the Belfield Four. We could wear knitted balaclavas with the tricolours and shout support for Hamas and Hezbollah. And before you know it, forget UCD, we'd be on Patrick Keeley's Late Show, performing. And they would deny everything, especially the embarrassing parts, which would be being on Patrick Keeley's Late Show. In any case, we are now all on the banned list, officially. Ben, of course, managed to get banned twice in one day, or cancelled twice in one day, both times by People Before Profit, as it happens. Because as we'll see, the student branch of People Before Profit seems to have had a hand, not in someone's pocket, but in the UC cancellation. They took their hand out of someone else's pocket just to have a go at that. I mean, it's shocking that PVP would refuse a question from a black man. It's shocking racism. Absolutely appalling. Actually, for me personally, this is my second cancellation in recent times. The first was a more private one, a sort of semi-cancellation. In March, I published a little piece in Spite. We all know Spite, Brendan O'Neill's online magazine. This led to something of a meltdown from one of my oldest and closest friends. He was dismayed that I would publish there, as he put it. This is being videoed. Hi, John. Spite, over here, he wrote, he's an academic in the UK, is viewed as sad, pathetic, libertarian, gobby shit that doesn't care how adjacent it is to misogyny, racism, and transphobia and the like, just so long as they get to make their free speech points. Maybe that's your crowd, but don't send me your pieces if you are going more into that world. Well, if you could see me now. I look at term adjacent. I confess I could be accused of recently of being far right adjacent. I was standing alongside Nick having a drink over there. Nick,
Far right, Nick.
Nick, I'm only joking. In fact, I have to say, to get back to the thing I was supposed to talk about, the hard conversations, one of the best hard conversations that I've listened to, at least in the Irish context, was between Nick and my UCD colleague and friend Brian Fanning. It took place around December. It's on YouTube. It's easily found. It's a really good listen. It's about an hour and 20 minutes long. And it began because Nick reached out to Brian. Brian is a professor in sociology at UCD. And Nick reached out to him to challenge him for suggesting that Nick was a far-right candidate. And Brian took it back, didn't he, Nick? He qualified it at least. It was a great conversation. You could say it was one of those hard conversations that people should be having. And I would recommend you look for it if you haven't seen it already. It's Brian Fanning and Nick Delahanty. Look for that on YouTube, you'll find it. Actually, Brian was giving me some advice just recently to try to avoid getting frustrated and wasting time criticizing the state of the university and to concentrate on my own area of philosophy. It's good advice. It's really good advice. It was the very next day that my Spiked article came out with the title, Irish Academics Are Forced to Toe the Line on Transgenderism. So it might have looked like I was tossing his advice in the bin immediately, but it was a complete coincidence. Now, Dean has already said something about the great cancellation. Let me say something about it too from my perspective. So, yesterday morning, before 9 a.m., being an academic, I was obviously still in bed, my head of school of philosophy texted me about an issue of some urgency, and the message was about how, quote, we must talk about the cancellation of Is Ireland Safe? Now this made me wonder if my school of philosophy was trying to cancel the event. After all, this is the school that announced 2 months ago that it was leaving X or Twitter because the school's values were not consistent with the values of X or of its fascist owner and spawn of the devil, Elon Musk, or something like that. I can't remember how they put it. So were they trying to cancel my event? A school of philosophy cancelling the event? As it turned out, at least on this occasion, it wasn't the School of Philosophy, it was the head honcho himself, former principal of the College of Social Sciences and Law, former principal of EDI at UCD, and current registrar or deputy president of UCD, Colin Scott, he, him. The fact is, the event had already been cancelled by the university. What Professor Scott was nervous about was that although the event had been cancelled, it was still being advertised. And this is what my head of school was telling me, by the way. So Scott was keen that I ensured that the cancellation was communicated to avoid people turning up to the event. He added, my head of school added, quoting Scott seemingly, that if people turned up, if you good people turned up, thinking it was still going ahead, and there was trouble, because you're all troublemakers, then I, as the UCD organizer, would be held responsible. Now, none of this made much sense until my head of school let slip that students were upset. So, I see. So, student disturbances, students causing disturbances would be my fault. I would be blamed for that. In any case, I told Dean about this almost immediately. Then I wrote to Professor Scott to let him know that attendees would be notified. I also took the opportunity to ask why it was cancelled, pointing out at Free Speech Ireland, which is the group behind Breaking Point, or it is Breaking Point. that they have run successful and peaceful events at Trinity and the Dublin Chamber of Commerce. And I got a reply from Professor Scott. He said, "You will understand that we have to prioritise quiet study for students in a residence building during the period of revision and exams." Now, the village auditorium is near student residential buildings, and apparently there are some rooms above it, but I still wasn't satisfied with Colin's response, so I wrote back, "Just to be clear, can I take it then that if we were not booked in a residential building or building with residences nearby, the event would not have been cancelled? So it could have been moved, say to a theatre or a room elsewhere on campus? Perhaps there's time for it still to be moved. If so, I could look into that with the States immediately," I added. To this, Professor Scott replied with just one sentence, well, he wrote, "Dear Tim, we cannot rebook to a different venue at this stage." That was it, his full answer. So I tried again. "Dear Colin, I'm sorry to press on this matter." I do sometimes sound like Douglas Murray in my head. "But I really would like some clarity as to why the event was cancelled. I should say I have been sent a screenshot of an email, which seems to be from you, that has been posted on social media by PBPUCD, presumably a UCD student branch of the political party People Before Profit, attached below. The post celebrates the cancellation and seems to insinuate that the event may have had racist connotations, indeed that it was cancelled for that reason. So I asked, was this the reason? I continued, or was it cancelled because of a worry that student or academic activists might protest the meeting, thus creating disturbances during exam period? And I continued, either of these reasons would be extremely concerning to those who believe in the importance of free speech, as I do. I was going to add, and as I'm sure you do too, but I thought that's going too far. And then I pulled out my medals. As the convener of the Dublin University's branch of Academics for Academic Freedom, a member of the Heterodox Academy, and someone who has worked with the US-based free speech organization The Fire, it is very important to me that this cancellation could be understood as something other than a move by the university to silence the exercise of free speech on campus. An explanation would be most welcome. Now, the post by People Before Profit UCD, if you haven't seen it, I think perhaps many people have seen it, Ben's friends, People Before Profit, it did indeed include an email. It blanked out part of the addresses, not very well. I mean, the president is written in one of the addresses, and the name was blanked out. So it read like this: "Dear blank, thank you for following up. I understand the concern, but can confirm that the venue booking was cancelled and the UCD organizer is aware and engaging to ensure that cancellation of the event is communicated. Best wishes, Colin." And beneath this, the PBP UCD account holder had written, "Thank you to everyone who signed the letter on behalf of their society and emailed UCD. Only when standing together can we keep UCD an anti-racist campus." Now, the letter referred to here was itself of interest. It was titled "Joint Letter Against UCD Far-Right Event," and it was addressed to the President Orla Feely, and it expressed deep concern over the planned event. Indeed, it was, quote, "shocking to see an event like this planned to take place on our inclusive," well, we're inclusive, we start with inclusion, "our inclusive and multicultural campus." And it picked out two of the speakers in particular as nefarious characters. Neither of us, Theo. I continued, "It is clear, due to the character of the panel, that the rhetorical title of this event is simply a dog whistle to conduct an event with a predetermined purpose to blame criminality on the most vulnerable groups in Ireland, immigrants and asylum seekers." So I don't know why you've all paid money to come here, because the conclusion is already apparent. And then, holding this event would risk the safety of the diverse communities within UCD. Therefore, we, the signatories of this letter, call for this event not to be held on the UCD campus. So I put it to Professor Scott. As I said earlier, was this event cancelled because of pressure from activist students or indeed staff? In fact, the letter called for signatures, but not from individuals. It wanted signatures from people representing societies, student societies, but also schools. So if anyone has managed to find a list of these signatures, it would be very interesting. So Was it cancelled because of pressure from activist students? The response came this morning, in fact. It was this. My understanding, this is from Colin Scott, my understanding is that the booking was made by you for what transpired to be an externally organised event with a fee for attendance. Transpired as if there was some subterfuge involved. When booking the room, I actually stated it was organised by Free Speech Ireland. And he continues, there is some sensitivity around externally organised events on campus during the period of exams because of relatively small risk of disruption to study and revision. With even a small risk where the consequences of disruption may be significant for some students, I understand the view was taken that it was appropriate to cancel the event booking. So he's distancing himself from the decision, which raises the question, well, who made the decision? But again, there's no reference to pressure or activism. The suggestion from this could be that any event of any nature would have met the same treatment. So to put it in terms of First Amendment rulings, and Professor Scott is a legal professor, so he might like this when I write to him tomorrow. To put it in terms of First Amendment rulings, Scott evidently wishes to make it appear as a time and place restriction as opposed to a content restriction. That is, it's the timing, the exam time, and the place near residences, which is the issue, not the content of the event. But of course, this is very dubious. And the original email from UCD Estates says that, they emphasize that the issue seems to be with the organizers. They named them. They named the campaign, as he put it, the campaigning group Breaking Point. We understand the booking is made on behalf of a campaigning group, Breaking Point, and that the event planned may create risks of disturbance on the campus during a busy examination period. So the response is dubious, and more needs to be said because this is an important matter. But I will conclude with one silver lining coming out from this sorry affair, and it's this: the Deputy President's persistent refusal to state that the event was cancelled for its content. It can be seen as evasive or dissembling, and it is. But what's interesting is that Scott evidently feels the need to look for another reason to justify the cancellation. So I take it that he or UCD or whoever cancelled it, they wanted to concede to the mob, but not explicitly for the mob's reasons. So it does seem that they are actually aware of the free speech aspect and that it cannot be simply or publicly dismissed. And that is something. It's a start. We are getting somewhere.